I know, I didn't even look.
It's
Sitting at some random.
It's been a crazy summer.
All right, we are live. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 9th, 2025 Litchfield School Board meeting. The time is now 5:30. We'll call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have review and revision of tonight's agenda. Any updates, changes to this evening's agenda? Hearing, seeing none, we'll move over to consent. We have our committee reports. Any board members like to move anything off consent tonight? Nope. Hearing and seeing none. There are a few items in the budget committee, open questions that we just need to make sure for the next budget committee that we respond to. All right, we have summary of non-public actions from June 18th, 2025. Ms. Ames motion to approve the June 4th, 2025 non-public meeting minutes. Mr. Shoemaker seconded that motion. Sorry. The motion passed 4-0-1. Mr. Plansky abstained. Mr. Shoemaker motion to approve Zachary Stevenson as CHS Assistant Principal. Ms. Ames seconded that motion. That motion passed 5-0. Mr. DeWitt motion to approve Gabriela Salas as a CHS Skills Teacher. Mr. Shoemaker seconded that motion. That motion passed 5-0. Mr. Shoemaker motion to accept the resignation of Jessica Yankonopoulos as CHS Skills Teacher. Ms. Ames seconded that motion. That motion passed 5-0. Mr. Shoemaker motion to adjourn the non-public session at 9:30 p.m. Ms. Ames seconded that motion. That also passed 5-0. With that, we'll move into presentations and recognitions, and we will invite Ms. Reagan Cutter and Ms. Sydney Parisi up to the table to talk about sophomore project. Good evening and welcome.
Okay. So for our sophomore project, we were looking to redo the Griffin front sign. My mom brought it up to me when she was watching like one of the parades that the sign looked like it needed a lot of help. And so I emailed Mr. Mitchell, and he just expressed that the sign hadn't gotten a lot of care in a while. And when we went to go take a look at it, it didn't look like it was either. It's all peeling and white. Actually, there's pictures of it on the next slide. It's not in a great shape. So to redo it, we needed some, to do research and come up with our designs. So we have 4 designs, 2 with the Griffin logo of just with the stripes and the tiger and Mr. Mitchell's motto, we thrive. And then the other 2 quotes are think positively. When Mr. Mitchell comes back from his vacation, I think he wanted to decide on which one to do. But yeah, we had to do research on how to paint over the sheet metal, how to get rid of the paint that was already there, just where to get the materials and just everything. I think we're gonna use some stencils so it's not completely freehanding of just the paws and stuff. Yeah, and we have our timeline. So I think next week we're doing more research on just supplies and everything, and then the week after we can start actually removing all the flaking and paint and everything, and then we can start to do it all. Yeah.
So maybe just help the board explain, being a little bit close to this, right? So help the board explain the parts of the sign that you're talking about, right? Kind of rehabbing. So when we look at the sign back on this slide, what parts of the sign are you talking about?
The bottom.
Right, so just
square.
the bottom section below where the words go.
Yeah.
Where it's really sun faded.
Got it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then there's just our research facts.
So what did Mr. Mitchell say to you in terms of why you're here in front of the board?
He just said it would be a good idea since, the sign is like a part of like the school's property.
And who your dad is, right?
Look, so with a little bit of background, right? So, I mean, Mr. Mitchell went to the town with any kind of town-approved sign changes publicly. They didn't have an issue with any changes cosmetically to the sign, which is what this is considered. They just said, hey, you know, because it is school property, we should be talking about it at the board level, making sure the board's aware of any kind of cosmetic changes to the sign itself, and that's why we're presenting it here tonight.
Do we know
So-
when the last time that was painted?
Oh, God.
When it was put in?
When was it put in?
Oh, God.
The only reason I ask is because
1930?
the only reason I
Since
ask is
before
because they're going to be
2013.
sanding it. Is there lead paint on that? Do we know?
It's not that old.
I don't know that they're going to be sanding it as opposed to pressure washing it. But
Wear masks.
yeah,
Don't eat the paint chips. Just spare us all. But thank you for doing that.
So you do have to technically ask the board for permission.
Yeah.
So
Do I have your permission?
When was the last time she asked that?
look, I'm going to abstain. So if the board wants
Is
to,
it were you going to make a
it's a
motion?
motion, but I would make the motion as a board, right? Pending Mr. Mitchell's review.
Yep.
Right. He hasn't seen this. He's on PTO at the moment. So.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the sophomore project to, I guess, refresh the sign at Griffin Memorial School, subject to Mr. Mitchell's review and approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Shoemaker, second by Mr. Plansky. Additional discussion, questions?
Nope.
It'll be nice to see it looking good, girls.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Aye. That carries 4-0-1. Great job. Thanks for coming tonight.
Good luck.
thanks, girls.
I'm excited to see what it looks like. Really cool. Awesome.
All right, you're gonna text your mother? Stay holding the card. All right, next up, we have student rep reports, but is there a student?
No
rep
new
this
reps
evening?
yet.
Okay.
We just keep the link so we don't lose it.
Perfect. So we'll move into community comment on agenda items. This is the first of two community comments for this evening. Mr. Oblinus, welcome. Just as a reminder, we did receive some emails from you a short time ago. This is the agenda item that's subject to 3 minutes for agenda items, and then the other one later this evening is open.
I'll try to stay within that time frame. Essentially, what I originally intended to do was come here and talk to you about what I think was a deceitful, calculated, unjust, and unjustified action against me to remove me at the May 21st board meeting from the FIC. I had put together a whole memo about justification, about contacts that I'd had with all board members and such. But as I thought about it, I said, what's the ultimate potential outcome of that? And that's being placed back on the FIC. I've said before in the FIC, I think it's been a waste of 18 months, and I think it's going to continue to be a waste of time. So with that, I'm not going to challenge what you've done, even though I think it was completely wrong and didn't follow even what your policy is now proposed to be, which I find just incredulous. But what I do want to talk about, in the recommendation to remove me, you mentioned that I had sent you a text.
Is this related to the agenda?
Yeah.
Where in the agenda is this related to?
The FIC building.
Are you getting to the building subject?
Yes, right now. In fact, the text I sent you was to simply meet, and you didn't even disclose that. I've had people say, how bad was your text? That's all it was. And so what I want to talk about is what was in that text of my reason for coming to you. And it's simply stated is that I had a meeting with Mr. Mitchell, the principal, in which I went over my thoughts on how the repairs option could solve not only repair issues, but also the educational services issues. It was a very productive meeting. I showed him my thoughts on plans, and beginning with this particular sheet, showed him how his desire to relocate the office to a core central area could be accomplished by moving the existing office to classroom 16. Classroom 16 is right in the middle. Also would afford perfect security entrance using the hallway with the adjacent office. You like that? We also talked about how much service space is in the building and how it could be reconfigured. So one of the things I did in this spreadsheet here is I went and added up all the educational service space from the new proposed school, thinking that our existing is very far underneath that. Strangely enough, the proposed new school had just around 8,000 square feet of educational service space. Our existing Griffin Memorial is 8,300. So we talked about how we reconfigure that. The space that would be available in the office relocation, we talked about how that'd be configured as it would be in the new school in the smaller configurations. We talked about how the 1930s building could be adapted to any opportunity that he wanted as far as educational services or a combination of classrooms. But by using the 1930s buildings, it would free up classrooms. And then finally, I talked about and showed him this particular plan right here, which was done by Harriman in 2006, which I've sent to the FIC a number of times and never got reviewed. This shows how you would solve the traffic problems, all within the budget of repairs only amount, which is estimated from the reports that you had done from On-Site Insight and the Turn report from anywhere from $3.5 to $5 million. He thought that was a good idea. I wanted to share that with you. That's the reason for my text. And I also wanted you to stop tell other people to stop telling me to say things that you have deemed untrue. And I'm just reporting what's in your reports. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. And you use that against me. And in fact, what's upsetting is that we have known that repair-only option has been on the table for 25 years. In fact, it was recommended, this is from the planning document of the town of 2000. It's a current document, has not been updated, but it's dated 2002. And in that, under this school section, there's a paragraph that says, future GMS capital needs highlighted in February 2000 by Assistant Superintendent include installation of sprinklers in 2002, installation of a rooftop dehumidification system in 2003, as well as replacing the boiler in the same year. This is what we've been talking about to try to solve the water problem in GMS. It's been there in all the reports. I can show you 6 or 7 of them. And we failed to do that. And by removing the repairs-only option from the FIC's consideration, you've essentially removed what I think is actually the most viable option that would be supported not only by the taxpayers, but actually deliver what you need as far as educational needs, but also comfort needs of your teachers and your students. And more importantly, would probably get voted in. What you're doing now, I don't believe is going to get voted. And I will continue to say, by eliminating the repairs-only option, you have eliminated, in my mind, the most viable option. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional community comments? All right, there's a second round of community comments later in this evening or 8 o'clock, whichever one comes first. We'll turn it over to Vice Chair Ames for correspondence.
All right, on June 18th, 2025, the superintendent emailed the board circulating a link to the end-of-year spending spreadsheet. On June 18th, the superintendent emailed the board regarding confidential student issue. On June 19th, the superintendent emailed the board regarding an update to that confidential student issue. On June 24th, the superintendent emailed the board circulating a calendar invite for a special board meeting to be scheduled on Friday, June 27th. There was a response from Mr. Cutter. On June 24th, Renee Burgess emailed the board circulating the updated calendar invite with a 3:30 p.m. start time. On June 25th, Jan Sullivan emailed the board circulating draft public and non-public minutes from the prior meeting. On June 25th, Superintendent emailed the board circulating the agenda for the June 27th, 2025 special school board meeting. On June 26th, Ron Oblinas emailed Julie Darling and copied the board requesting a link for the responses to questions for the RFP that was posted June 25th. On June 26th, Ron Oblinas emailed Renee Burgess copying the board requesting that Renee respond to his email as Julie was out of the office. There were responses to that from Renee and from Mr. Oblinas. On June 27th, the superintendent emailed the board circulating an updated end-of-year spreadsheet. On June 30th, Jan Sullivan emailed the board circulating draft public minutes from the special meeting on June 27th. On July 3rd, Ron Oblinas sent an email to Julie Darling copying the board requesting a link to where responses to the RFP will be posted. There was a response from Ms. Darling and a response from Mr. Oblinas. On July 3rd, Julie Darling sent an email to the different companies that submitted bids for the RFP, advising them that bids would be unsealed on July 7th at 11 a.m. And the board was copied on that email. On July 7th, Anna Marati emailed the board circulating FY25 credit card manifest. On July 7th, Anna Marati emailed the board circulating the final FY25 manifest checks and direct deposit. On July 7th, the superintendent emailed the board circulating the draft agenda for the July 9th, 2025 board meeting. On July 7th, the superintendent emailed the board circulating the link to the folder with the scanned RFP bids. On July 7th, Anna Marati emailed the board circulating the FY26 credit card manifest. On July 8th, Anna Marati emailed the board circulating the payroll 403B manifest. On July 8th, Anna Marati emailed the board circulating the first manifest for 2026, hence the big pile of manifests here. And on July 9th, Ron Oblinas emailed the board and Renee Burgess requesting a link to the July 9th 2025 school board meeting and agenda, and there were responses from Mr. Cutter and Ms. Burgess. I'll also note there was an additional email from Mr. Oblinas this afternoon at, I can't see the time, at 4:59 p.m. With attachments that I have forwarded to Jan Sullivan to include in the minutes. So it's not written on my sheet, it will be in a minute, and that was the most recent correspondence up to date until 4:59 p.m.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along with the agenda, we'll turn it over to the superintendent and kicking things off with enrollment.
Yeah, just quick enrollment. Just want to keep you updated on the kindergarten number. We did actually have one student move, so we went down to 60 students in kindergarten. So I guess that's where we're going to be, around there. So we won't have as many teachers next year, as I mentioned last time. We repurposed the fifth. I won't go into all the dominoes of it all, but we did add open positions in the district that we utilize the additional teacher to fill, so we'll have 4 kindergartens next year. So unless something crazy happens, that's where we're at. So.
Okay. Any questions on enrollment? Thank you.
Hiring update. Last board meeting granted me the ability to hire over the summer, so we've made 3 hires since then. We can go over any questions you have in non-public about them. They're part of the non-public agenda. But we've hired a part-time reading specialist, Stephanie Galipsy. She was a pleasure to meet with. It came in to meet with me a couple weeks ago for the part-time position. It's perfect. She's looking to step back. She was a full-time teacher and is looking to step back a little bit in her hours due to family commitments, so part-time is perfect for her. Case manager at LMS, filling our 1-year position. We have a leave from that position at the LMS, so Sue Rafferty is rejoining us. She got her SOE in special ed, so that will be nice to help us out with a need that we have in middle school that we thought was going to be really tough to find a 1-year person for. And then a speech language pathologist, a Campbell High School graduate, Autumn Thompson. I don't know her, but she seemed lovely when she came in to meet with me. Graduated about 5-6 years ago from Campbell High and was really excited to come back to the district and work with us. So those are our hires right now. I have their folders for you to review later if you would like. So Still looking for a couple case managers at the high school. We've had we have some tutor openings that we're looking for, but we have got a couple applicants in for, so hopefully those will continue to kind of fill out. But if anyone interested in high school special education, that's the one spot where we need someone pretty badly. So otherwise, we're in good shape.
All right. Thank you very much. Always
Yep.
good for the plug.
Last thing, this is last year. What's the best way to say this? So there's an MOA with the LEA and the LSS about the mandatory trainings that we do, and they have the ability to do those mandatory trainings in advance of the professional development days and receive credit for that professional development day. We did an MOA with these with the two bargaining units last year. We're continuing their contracts, so we thought it would be best to continue with the MOA, even though everyone was on board with it all. But until we get negotiations settled with the LEA and make that official, we thought an MOA would be good. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. I'll be signing that unless you have any questions or hesitations. It's literally the same MOA from last year with updated dates to reflect the upcoming school year, with the same parameters and same rules for everything associated with that. So unless there's any questions, I just want to make you aware that we're going to send that out to the two union presidents and get that taken care of. So,
Any issues at the board level?
What is the first day of school?
August 25th? Yeah, August 25th. This is the Friday going to Labor Day.
Countdown is on.
There wasn't any issues last year in terms of the training being completed? Is that-
No, so their punishment is they have to come sit with me if they don't get it, and no one sat with me. I was all by myself.
Oh, bummer.
And I had left my trainings purposely to that day, because I'm like, someone is going to test the limits. New superintendent, new procedure, right? Like, someone's going to test this. Nope.
I think they'd rather have the day off.
Yep, so, it
Okay.
was a quiet day. I got all my trainings done. It was lovely. But yeah, everyone got them done in advance.
So it went well last year. Sounds good.
Okay, no issues.
What's that?
No issues.
Yeah, no issues. Good,
Okay.
excellent. I have a copy if you want to read through it, but the link's right there for you.
Yep, we're good.
So-
We'll turn it over to Ms. Darling for a business and operations update.
So on my BA report, I have included the FY26 school board financials, which of course is not a whole lot. We have done quite a bit of ordering, so there has been some spending, of course, but we have all of those updated. As far as transfers, I did include the transfers for FY25, even though we are in FY26, just because I wanted to make sure that we were making that public information, the transfers that occurred since the last board meeting. With regard to the RFP proposals, we're happy to announce that we've received 7 submissions for the pre-construction services to address the needs of Griffin Memorial School. So we are excited for the next steps to see how this goes, but we're really happy to have 7 options to choose from, so that's very promising. I wanted to give an update LMS on the LMS parking lot. We did have another sinkhole, unfortunately, that happened right after the school year, but still within FY25. We were able to get that repaired quickly, which is excellent. So that was repaired last weekend, and we took care of that, so that's excellent news. We are still waiting to get the quote still for the complete LMS parking lot renovation. We have not received that yet, but I know that's something that we won't be able to move on at this point anyway, but I'll still continue to work on that as we get ready to start making plans for the next school year budget and any more articles that might be attached to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. We did have an issue at LMS in the kitchen, the freezer. We do have a protocol set up over the summer, of course, because we don't have regular kitchen staff in the kitchens, for our custodial staff to check the temperatures of the freezers twice per shift at the beginning and end of their shift. Unfortunately, the external thermometer must not have been working. When someone did enter the freezer on a Tuesday, I believe it was, they realized that it wasn't working and everything in the freezer had spoiled, unfortunately. luckily or fortunately for us, you know, it was the end of the school year, so it was, you know, cleaned out pretty well. Most of the items that were still in there were a lot of state bid items, so not as worth as much money as other items would be. So the total loss was $937. But I just wanted to make that known. We certainly had concerns about the freezer, considering it was a very new unit. We had just replaced that, you know, a couple years ago. We did have a contractor come out to check things out. It was a tripped fuse that they think that was perhaps because of the excessive heat. They couldn't find anything wrong with any of the compressors or the unit itself. So everything is working properly now. And we are, of course, changing our protocol now that people are going inside the freezer to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
We're gonna fix that broken thermometer.
What's that?
We're gonna fix that broken thermometer.
That is something we'll take care of as well, yeah. Absolutely.
One question on that, just top of mind, right? Given now that the building is fully operational on solar, right? Have there been any other surges or breaks in electricity as a result of the switch?
That I'm aware of, but I will certainly keep that on my radar. I'll ask Dave to follow up on that.
I'm just curious if there's something
like that.
as a result of that new energy source
It's a good
being
question.
being the supply.
We haven't heard anything, but which is good.
Absolutely.
You know,
Right, if
but
there's
good to be
like
aware of.
other breakers
Sure.
being tripped as a result, right?
Yeah, that is important. I'll follow up on that.
We started, do we have summer school in middle school? Sarah?
Yes.
Do we have summer school? Yeah.
In the middle school?
Yeah.
That group's in the middle school, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we do have some more bodies starting this week in the middle school, so we'll see how it goes.
See the bus rolling around. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
They're
saw it
definitely
too.
there. We're gonna be there tomorrow.
When, I mean, there's always bus issues, not like bad bus issues, but like first day of new routes, but it went surprisingly well Monday. Always small things, but nothing major. So.
In terms of more questions, a couple. How are we tracking towards the end of year encumbrances, end of year return? Where did we land with that?
So right now, the expenses under budget is 1.4, and that is an estimate. There are still things that can come in. You know, we estimate to the best of our ability for any outstanding payables and things of that nature. So that number will continue to be adjusted, you know, accordingly. But that is a number that we feel comfortable with at this point. So that brings, with the approved encumbrances, that brings us down to $649,644 at this time.
Okay, that's actually less than what I was anticipating.
So is there a drop dead date when we say we're done for 2025?
I mean, essentially, once the audit begins, which would be July 21st.
One of the questions that Ms. Douglas asked at the last budget committee meeting that we should be prepared for responding to is an accounting of how we got from our previous starting point of around 800,000 and how that went to 1.4.
Yeah.
Right, and how we have confidence in that number. So we can expect that question to come in. She's already asked it, but I think more
We
formally.
covered that in our last meeting, though, pretty.
I think she's really looking for a detailed accounting behind that and kind of confidence in that number.
I think it's pretty easy detailed accounting because it was literally one thing that you just get added back in, right?
Yeah, I messed up reading the encumbrances.
Yeah.
Yeah, remaining. That was what it was. I mean, we can use that report that we showed at the last board meeting that summarizes it. And I can show the line that I screwed up, misread. I mean, the lines were correct, all the accounting was correct. I just misread it, you know, so.
Why did I think that number was closer to 800,000
that's what I was saying. I
than
thought it
six
was-
something?
Well, we started at 790 or something like that. We spent money out of that already,
Where is
Julie?
it?
Well, maybe that is.
I think you
we've
meant
done
that.
I know we've
number
done some
right there.
I
jobs.
thought it was, I was expecting to be.
We encumbered an
875.
additional.
She's right. I think
Additional
I'm
25.
sorry,
she
I
saw the wrong line.
apologize.
I'm looking at it right now over her shoulder. She's at the 800 number right there.
I apologize.
That's the reverse of it.
Okay, so the 897.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
number I was
That's-
expecting.
My
Okay.
apologies.
That makes.
That makes more sense for me.
Okay. All right. And then, let's see. And then I wanted to also bring to you the payroll authorization. It's brought to our attention that this is something that we've done in previous years. With regard to the FY26 budget, we do wanted to give us the total that we would not exceed with regard to salaries for the for FY26, which would be $14,563,503.62. That is what we have budgeted for salaries, and that's with regard to all of our, so Fund 10 and Fund 21. And so we just wanted to pass this around for this to be signed by the board.
This is salary and benefits.
It's just.
Salary is what Doug had done before, so that's what
Correct,
we
that
did.
the exact same.
This.
Like, that would be
Okay.
low for salary and benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all
The
right.
benefits, we can find the benefits of what we have budgeted,
That's okay.
certainly. We tried to mimic Doug's report from the one that we found that had this less in it.
I think the benefits are less of the issue. The problem was the payroll was sometimes being paid before we had a chance to see the payroll manifest. And so this approves it for the full year, but the benefits, we typically will see, even over a 3-week break, we'll still have time
Yeah.
to do that.
As a part of the spreadsheets in your reporting, right, is it possible to see a draw against the 14,563,000, right? So as we approve payroll manifests throughout the fiscal year, right, this is our starting point. Can we then see the draws of approved manifests off this, so we can keep track?
Yep, should be able to do that.
Yep.
All right, any questions on the, this authorization?
No questions.
Okay. Anything else from a business operations standpoint this evening? All right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Taylor.
All right, just a real quick PIA update. There's lots going on this summer, but we finished really nice vertical alignment meetings for science and social studies, ELA, and math. And then I did a 6-hour U-Fly training for our foundations program, which was well attended. There was like 21 teachers that came, which was great during the summer. I'm working through a lot of grant things. Number one is the consolidated app, which is almost ready to go, and closing out other grant activities that we had going, and also reviewing and revising our grading system. So those are just small snippets of what's happening so far. So,
Lots of excitement over the summer.
oh yeah, my board is quite full of things. So, but all good things. So, just rocking and rolling for CIA. Yeah.
In terms of grading, because it's near and dear to me, right? Well, is it like an overhaul of how we grade, or is it just kind of like the technology behind it?
No,
little
so
bit of
it's
both.
going to be the whole thing. So we're to start. So I sent out an email to the staff because there were a lot of things that were uncovered, and I started uncovering these things earlier in the year through conversations with teachers and through conversations with parents. And you can't change a grading system once we've started, right? Like you can't. So just taking notes and listening to stakeholders and feedback, and then a big problem surfaced at the very end of the year. And we were like, okay, so in order to go forward, we had to step back. So we're stripping everything back to a more traditional grading system for this next year. I'm having teachers come in next week and the week after to give their feedback and their opinions to things. I also have a form out that is collecting their feedback so that I still have their input on what this is going to look like for this year. And then I'm creating a stakeholder group that's going to include teachers, parents, and students to what does Litchfield I know, that thing has
Leave me
been
alone.
attacking.
Now it's on yours.
It's aggressive fly. So we're gonna have a stakeholder group, to rebuild what a actual grading system looks like and what makes sense for our community, because what we have right now, you ask 3 different people and you'll get 3 different explanations of what it is. So we need to reset and then level set and then move forward. So we have to kind of go back to move forward.
Yeah, so elementary is going to stay pretty much the same with their grading. They've worked hard on
Yeah.
their report card and how they were doing it. And we seem to hear no significant issues with the elementary school reporting out to families and stuff like that. It's a different style. It's not traditional grading metrics. It's more of a standards-based, how you doing type of system. But middle and high will have that kind of revamp to it. And I think it comes down to as simply as this: if families are trying to support their students and can't understand how to support them with how we're reporting out the grading, then that's an issue, right? It shouldn't take,
Right.
a doctorate degree in mathematics to accomplish. I'll put it this way: like I have a degree in mathematics. If it takes me 3 hours to parse through a kid's grade, that's an issue, So it needs to be more accessible for the stakeholders, the teachers, the students, the families, so kids can find success in it in a more better way that helps them learn.
So I have a question, and I'll preface this by saying I understand that by changing the grading structure, it's going to just help us understand the current infrastructure of how we're doing within the current infrastructure. But the question that I've been asking for a long time is, gee, I can tell just by your face, you know what I'm going to say. How do we define success, right? And I'm wondering, I know that's something we're kind of working through, but I'm wondering if we're changing grading, right? Is there any component of have we gotten anywhere with that in terms of what we're defining success as, and is this grading structure going to align with that?
So it's going to be nice to have another year where we're going to be just doing a more traditional type grading system, because we need time. So I've been working a lot with teachers on vertical alignment, and with that vertical alignment comes breaking down standards and identifying learning outcomes. So when you identify learning outcomes, then you identify learning targets and how you assess and know whether or not students are reaching those learning targets. Like, what's our criteria for success? How do we know that they have reached these proficiencies? What rubrics do we have? Right now, we don't really have all of those things in place to, what is the criteria there? So we need to establish all of that while we're talking about, okay, what is the system that makes sense to report out on this that doesn't take a degree in math or a doctorate in curriculum to figure out, right? All stakeholders should be able to look at the grade and understand what that means, right? So that's all going to be, we're working towards that.
And I think we're going to take a small step backwards to take a bigger step forward in the long run, right? To define what success looks like within the confines of the grading system and assessment reporting that we're doing, right? So it's going to feel very traditional probably next year with grading, and we're going to involve teachers and have a voice in this and make sure people are good with it. And so it actually might not look that different on the surface. It'll still be A, B, C's, that type of grading. It'll be a numeric 100-point system. But the math behind it to get that will hopefully be easier for everyone to understand, so they can understand how they can achieve better, right? If a kid is working hard and is working towards a B average, right? And they got a big test coming up and they're studying for it, they want to know what they're shooting for on that test so they can hit their mark, right? We want to be able to make that clear for a kid who's working hard and doing those type of things. And I think that was confusing in the system that was in place in last year. I can't speak for every year ahead of that. So, and it's not necessarily always about that numeric grade, right? And that's where the competency model, and you're going to hear a lot about changing of the ED, the ED 306s and how there's different language in that. We'll have to update policies around it and stuff like that. Hence why we're gonna start meeting with policy committee, start next week.
I have a whole
Do some adjustments to those type of things. So it's a very natural time to be looking at the grading systems, but yeah, we need to define, yeah, and we're gonna talk about portrait of a learner, defining what that looks like for our district. We have some of that stuff already. There has been some good work done in this district around that. But now what is the pieces to show that we've hit the strides that we want in our portrait of a learner, our vision of a graduate type of stuff. So it's coming. This is part of that long-term vision of all that. And Sarah's gonna be leading the charge here. Jen, our new high school principal, has a ton of experience in this avenue as well. Dan and Jen, OG Jen, we gotta come up with a name for the two of them. So, also very good about it, so we're in good hands with it all, so.
I guess I'm a bit confused.
Yeah.
What was the problem?
Yeah, so
And,
that,
like, what confidence can parents have in their grades from last? And again, that's my question, and if that's too detailed for today, then we can talk about it.
I think a problem, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's so the grading system here was based upon competencies, right? So like you have an assessment and all the competencies are averaging in different amounts to affect the grade differently, right? And I think there wasn't a uniformity on how we would weight those competencies within a particular assessment, right? So, for example, a teacher could be giving an assessment out, like say a math test. Let's just use math as an example. That's what I taught, right? And say there's 3 competencies attached to that assessment, right? They're all going to have an equal value to the overall grade for that particular assessment that would then get averaged into the larger grade, but a certain weight depending on the summative and the formative, so on and so forth.
Calculation of a calculation.
Yeah, there's a lot of calculations on top of each other. So that student may that on that assessment, like a teacher could approach that and put the same grade in for all 3 competencies because the kid got, say, an 85 out of 100 on the test, so I'm going to put in an 85 for all 3 competencies, right? Maybe a teacher actually broke that down assessment, and of that 100 points for that assessment, 50 of them were in competency 1, 30 were in competency 2, 20 were in competency 3, and I'm going to do a grade separate for that, and a grade separate for that, and a grade separate for that. And that's one way they could have approached it. Meanwhile, the kid's trying to figure out, like, what do I need on this test so I can get my B average? You know what I mean? So they're trying to do the math on the back end. So when we say, like, grades and confidence that people can have in their grades, they are accurate in the system that we have, right? Like, it was computing itself correctly. That's a really, really, really complicated system to spit out a grade, right? And then when we talk about different weights about when we like roll grades, like we kind of roll grades per semester, like we didn't take quarter averages to do a final year-long grade. We kind of rolled into a semester 1 grade and then we rolled into a semester 2 grade and then averaged that. We just need like consistency. We either roll grades or we don't, right? And when I talk about rolling grades, like the previous school I worked at, rolling grades meant that if you had a semester-long classes, the grade rolled the entire time, right? Like, and it just like added on top of each other. Or in a different school that I was at previously, the quarter grades were averaged. You had quarter 1 was average, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, and that's how you got your final grade. We've kind of split both differences, and we're talking like I could do this whole like how, depending on how you approach grading, the kids' grades can change a lot. Like the power of a 0 is a thing, and like all these averages and building on top of each other. So we're talking like sometimes hundredths of a point, tenths of a point or 2 differences depending on the specific approach. But that can make a difference for a kid trying to, hit a certain mark, a certain average of what they're trying to do. So have the grades been accurate? Yeah, for the system we have in place. Just the system's like super complicated. And then there's a philosophy about competencies in general and trying to marry competencies to a traditional grading system, right? Like, so we're competency-based.
It's square peg, round hole type of a situation,
Yeah, so
especially in our student information
Average
system.
average times 85% for summatives, and then an average of an average and of an average times 50% for formatives, and then you
Average those.
mirror the 2 together to get your final grade.
You can't average an average, it's
What-
bad math.
So if you have a kid who does really
It's
well on a summative,
challenging, right? Like it's challenging,
does
right?
great on a summative and doesn't move the needle on the grades because of all the other averages that make up the final grade.
So I know,
So
I know
I
it-
You
struggle.
could just go back to
Sorry.
old grades.
Sorry.
85 is big.
Heidi, I can show you a spreadsheet.
No, I'm following you. I
It's
think
such a waste of time.
what I'm frustrated or what I'm trying to understand better is we had a discussion last year at the board level about rolling. we had a discussion and we said we didn't want them to roll the full year. We wanted semester.
That's what we got.
And that's what we got, but what
But the
was
semester's
happening
not
is.
falling on a quarter one, quarter two average.
Right, and the semester would, so if, let's say, a teacher did some more summatives in the first semester than the second semester, then the first semester held more weight over the second semester than,
wasn't how it
or
was supposed to
vice
be.
versa.
I know, that's
It was
what we're,
supposed to
Right,
restart,
but-
like the
That's
kids would
the-
get
But
a
that's
refresh.
Right.
So that
But
if
they
they
did on
had
the
like
semester.
a C over here for their first semester, but they get it now and they kick some major ass in the, but in the second semester, then those would average on the final grade, but second semester grade would be an A.
right.
Yes.
But like, they're still rolling within the confines of that semester, which is where some of the issue lies, because we're
Right.
half in, half out on some of this stuff, like when you actually saw it all through the whole year, right? So, like, that's what we're trying to clean up some of
They
that.
don't, okay.
Yeah.
So,
So people were doing it differently?
Yes.
Well, even within the confines of following the rules, they were approaching the rules differently.
Correct.
Right? Like when you have to essentially, let's say that test example I gave you, right?
Yeah.
And say there's 3 examples to that competency. There was not a uniform way of, or 3 competencies within that test. There wasn't a uniform way of how that grade could be inserted for it, right? Like someone could afford the 3, like the kid could have gotten an 85 out of 100 on the test, right?
Yeah.
So a teacher could put in 85 for competency 1, 85 for competency 2, 85 for
Right.
competency 3. Or a teacher could say, like, on competency 1, the kid got a 90% in it,
Yeah.
they put 90%
No, I get,
in.
yeah.
And then for competency 2, they got 75%.
Yeah,
they're
these
gonna put
two
that in.
problems were for competency 3,
Correct.
and these 2 they got wrong, so they get a 0.
So
Or
they
they
get zero.
could just attach 3 competencies and put an overall grade of 85.
Right, so there's all these different approaches that, like, until you, like we're in the weeds of it, like, and, you know, we happen to be going through this issue, and 2 different teachers, this was in the high school, who teach the same subject and have a common course, came in and explained it 2 totally different ways to us, which is an issue.
But if
Right.
if you
So
do
if
it the
kid-
first way and you give everybody 3 competencies, and one's 90 and one's a 70,
next
and
kid
you
get
average
wrong.
them out, then the competency that was a
Yes.
70
Big problem.
is not equivalent to
It's
the other.
being
I mean,
fixed.
you just.
Or it is, depending on how you
You're
put everything in.
socializing the whole thing.
Right.
my only question is
Right,
this:
that's not-
how does
that's
this does this move? And maybe it doesn't matter, but does this move better equate to what colleges are going to be looking for, like
It-
from a grading perspective?
Yes.
Like, right? Because that's
We'll
like
be able
you know,
to really, we'll
Yes
be
and
able,
no. I'm gonna push back a little bit. Like,
yeah,
we need to make the grading system more straightforward for all stakeholders, so that people can support. Like, is it gonna make a radical difference for colleges? No, because we're still giving them a transcript with grades on it, and then they're gonna apply whatever their system is to our grades.
but
to
it's
tell
gonna
you the
make our
success.
But does this more
students
closely
better
align to how
prepared
they-
and understand their GPAs.
Yeah.
I
More than-
understand that, but I mean, it used to be the case that you very easily could tell you got an 85, it was a B, and colleges, you kind of knew like where their, GPAs were and stuff like that, and it was pretty easy to calculate that. And the colleges knew what your grades meant, and I feel like, I don't know whether they know what anyone's grades mean anymore.
Well, I think that's a bigger discussion for the college, high school conversation. I do think, like, it's gonna be marginal, the differences for when you're applying to college, because we're still gonna do a transcript that's gonna look exactly the same. How we got to the endpoint of those grades is gonna slightly change, right? Because we're gonna do a little bit more traditional averaging while we sort out some of these issues that we've uncovered here, right? So like a kid, when they submit their final transcript to college that they're using for the application process, is gonna have their transcript with their A's and their B's all listed down here. The college is gonna apply it to their little system that spits out like how they want it. Each college does that slightly differently, right? To spit out like, hey, this kid from Campbell High School, because they weight grades and they do this and they do that, they have a 3.87, right? In our system, that's really a 3.56. We accept kids who get a 3.0 and greater. Good, we're gonna accept this kid, right? Like, so that, they all have their systems that they kind of use for that. And whatever system we have, they take what we have and we apply it, because every high school is so differently. Like, we weight grades here versus on levels of classes. Other schools I've been to, 2 of the 3 other schools I haven't, didn't weight their grades, right? For different levels, courses and stuff like that. So every school is different in how they kind of approach that, so colleges.
So it's a
account
higher
for it.
level, it's a higher level
So
look.
if I may, let's
Yeah.
table the rest of this, right?
Yeah.
There's more work to do. on grading, and I'm sure as we get into August, the administration's gonna keep us apprised of what the updates are going into the new school year.
Can I just ask one more question? What is our role in that? I don't want to say don't we, but do we have to approve the grading? Because I think
Yeah, I'd like
we
to,
have
I'd like to
thought-
understand what
we
the final
understood
approach
it.
is.
I thought I understood it. Clearly, I don't. But I thought I understood it, and I thought when we talked about making the change to formatives and actually adding 15% back for that, we talked about rolling. We talked about all of these different things to implement. That seemed to come from a board level decision. So before we decide we're going back to traditional grading, I assumed you're going to bring a proposal forward
Yeah.
for what
Yep.
that will look like.
I have to get, so like,
Explain it to us like we're in, fifth
Yes.
grade, so we understand it.
Yeah,
I
and
will
like
have
Fourth grade.
Yeah, okay, fourth grade's good.
and it's not going to be like explaining to you like in fourth grade, because I'm sure what was presented to you before, like you understood, right? I think the hang up on it is there's just like like with anything, like when you apply it, like you take the theory and then you apply it to reality, there are problems you don't encounter until you're applying the system for real, right? Like you think you've sorted through every single issue that there is. And I think it's hard for us, we weren't here during the development of the system to be like, okay, this was done to counteract this problem, to counteract it. So it's like trying to pull back this puzzle piece of just like, well, why is this how this thing spits out this grade, right? Well, I guess it's because this happens over here, but if that happens over here, then this, why is this happening over there? And at some point, it just is like, this is really complicated.
Yeah.
And again, we can do maybe this would be good at one of the August board meetings, obviously, because we're talking about this, is like how, like, there's a presentation I've done a few different times called The Power of Zero, and how, like, depending on how you're doing grades, like, how a zero can, like, be no issue or an issue. And you're not necessarily changing it. It's all, like, these little tiny different things you can approach grading differently, and you just have to kind of accept an approach, you know? I think what we're looking at is we see, and what I struggled with as, like, if kids are trying, the kids need to understand the system that they're in, right? And I feel
It
like,
sounds like there needs to be uniformity
yes.
in how it's being applied
Yes.
for
Yes.
teachers,
Yeah.
so that kid A and B, who are both in the same class and taking the same exact test, don't have different grades because teacher A puts it in the grade book this way and teacher B puts it in the grade book this way.
yes, and also an okay for teachers to approach things slightly, like, personally, right? You know what I mean?
I don't
like
ever
finding
wanna
the
take
balance.
that
Right, but having
Yeah.
some guardrails, and
Yeah.
I've already met with Andrea, who built our back end system. We've already had a meeting. I've already met with Karen. Karen, Andrea, and myself are gonna be meeting and going through the entire back end of the system, and then building, once we have land and have approval on the system, we're gonna do a training video, and then the three of us are gonna be a traveling roadshow to go to the middle school and high school and help during the opening days set up grade books and make sure that everything is understood and everybody's comfortable with where we're at. And then we're gonna have a guide handbook. So there's gonna be a video, there's gonna be a guidebook, and there's gonna be human resources to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field. And we are very clear on how it's working this year, and then having that stakeholder group meeting throughout the year to come up with, okay, what's going to work long-term? What's our long-term plan here?
And before that happens, we're gonna see all of that.
Yeah, so for
Yes.
an initial step, you guys are looking to, put it short, sweet, simplify, standardize, and clarify, and bring that proposal in front of us as your
Correct.
initial step, and then develop everything that goes with that to fully develop it at a later
Correct. So it would be our August 6th meeting that I would have, because I have the teachers coming in. I have a Q&A on next Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday. And then Andrea and I are meeting on the 30th to look at where things landed, and because she's going to have to start working on the back end of things, and the rollover happens August 1st. So she'll be able to start working after that. So the 6th is actually a good timing to have our proposal ready to go and present it to you guys. Because then we're meeting again on the 11th to finalize and start working on the video and all the other stuff. Because obviously we've got to be ready to rock and roll by the time school starts.
It's not as,
It'll
it's
slow down
not
to speed up.
as crazy.
Exactly.
Like, it
Exactly.
sounds a lot more dramatic.
I've
than
been
what it
saying
is.
that a lot.
That's my favorite saying at work.
Yep, I've been saying it a lot lately.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the June 18th and June 27th public minutes.
All right, moving along, a motion
Second.
and a second for the June 18th and June 27th minutes. Motion by Mr. Shoemaker, second by Mr. Plansky. Additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, that carries 5-0. I would, in the interest of time, would like the board consideration to make an agenda change. Ms. Crowley's been sitting here patiently under old business. Can we flip old business and new business? Sure. And get food service out of the way?
Get us out of the way.
That's what I mean.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. How we doing?
Let's talk food service.
Let's talk food service. So before I get into the whole, I don't know, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that I watched the last school board meeting, and I had a couple of, based on the conversation that had happened, I just have a couple points to make regarding that. So regarding the deficit, I understand it is larger this year than last year. I really need to make, and I've been very hesitant to make this point in the past, because I felt like if I said it in public forum, it's gonna look like I don't support my staff, and that is the absolute that's not true at all. I run the numbers, pretty much all the time, and I've mentioned this to a few people. If labor didn't come out of the food services budget, we would be in the black $250,000, and we would have a new problem of how do I spend this $250,000 down? The reason we're in a deficit every year is due to labor having to come out of the food services budget, and that includes my salary all the way down to a kitchen worker. It's infuriating, but I believe my staff deserve their wages. I actually believe they deserve more wages. They are, they are the lowest paid in the district. And I believe, and I know that's going to increase next year. So I'm very comfortable and confident to say the deficit being $90,000 over last year's 70-something is due to salaries and benefits. Because I can't think of the word right now. Revenues and expenditures were roughly the same for year to year. So unless something changes on the federal level, because right now for reimbursement for lunch, for a paid kid, we get 50 cents back from the government per paid kid for lunch, which is supposed to offset labor and food and utilities and repairs and a bunch of other things. It's just not enough. So unless something changes federally, or we suddenly get like 600 kids enrolled tomorrow, this is just going to be a reality, unfortunately, for the foreseeable future. What my focus has shifted to is ensuring as close of a gap closing as possible given these circumstances. So I've explored, like I said, in the past with the meal charging, the raising prices, I'm not saying we have to. It's just an option that I found that could add money to the bottom line. I know we have, and I've expressed my displeasement's not a word. My friend's daughter says that all the time. So my displeasure, excuse me, for raising prices. I'm not advocating that we let's do it. It's just this is what would add if this was the case. So that being said, I am going into some revisiting and needing approval. I did the last presentation, I brought up the meal charging policy to update it so that the high school students would not be allowed to charge anything if they had a negative balance. And the credit card machines, and the reason why those two are on here is because if the board decides to go in that direction, I have to start working on that, and I don't work July typically, so once I get back in August, I'll be hitting that up and getting that going. And the credit card machine would be built into next year's budget, which is, if I don't have to and we're not going to move in that direction, I don't want to do all the work for no reason. Just plenty of other things I can do. And then the lunch prices, again, I really need a solid answer on that because it affects our state application, which if we don't get that in and approved, we don't get our reimbursement, and it's not retroactively applied. And I also can't send out free and reduced lunch applications until we have a solid what we're doing with that. So that's what I'm revisiting, needing approval for. I don't know if you want to pause here and talk about that, or if you want me to just keep going and then we can just talk about.
I think before we talk about pricing increases, I think I want to understand the following slides.
Fantastic.
And the changes potentially to programming.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know there was some clarification needed regarding this cafe bistro thing that I'm bringing into. This has been something I've wanted to do for many, many years, and until recently never really figured out how I can possibly do it. So the ultimate end goal is we would have a space, whether it is an unused room or somewhere that eventually that's where this would be housed, that students and staff can come in at any point in the day and get something. It would be open during all lunches, during breakfasts, passing times for the CAGs and stuff. This is really just taking what we're already doing for our a la carte prices and just our a la carte items, and expanding them into more options. I've noticed the high school is more on with the grab and go type situations, and these are ways that we can capitalize on this. So what I've done is came up with a list of, I don't know, whatever that is, say 15-ish items that we would be selling. I have the selling price of what I would, because it is still a nutrition program, it is still kids buying this. I'm trying to be, not ridiculous with our prices, and what the plate cost of that would be and how much that would profit. So, for example, like chips and salsa, we can get the bags of the Tostitos scoops in, and the salsa is the state salsa, so it's cheap, and that's what we can sell it for. It costs 70 cents to do it, we can sell it for $2.75. Kids will buy that like crazy. These are things as well that, you can get a breakfast sandwich all day long. You can get, avocado toast. And again, we're redoing our whole breakfast menu, so this will kind of tie in with that because we have new regulations. So all of these things are just things that we know, and I am aware that kids have either asked for, bring in, or are looking to do. This is not a tested, like a tried and this is, it's a very fluid menu, but this is just some examples of what I'm looking to do. On top of that, actually on the next slide, because there's actually another slide of prices, yay. Again, baked cookies, we'd sell them 2 for $1.25. An assorted fruit cup, the fruit cups would be much larger than what we would typically sell as like a lunch option with the fruit. So we're talking a larger portion. Same with the veggies and dips. We have some sandwiches, some paninis on there, and we're not talking like a full-blown menu at every single turn. We're talking like, maybe there's a rotation. So like Monday would be mac and cheese, Tuesday would be a panini, Wednesday would be something else that, you can offer a larger ticket item to sell. It just wouldn't be, we're not going to offer mac and cheese every single day. We're going to, kind of rotate through and see
Presumably you would track what's doing best.
That's what our system is for, and that's what we all do. Every kitchen has production records that they have to track what we sell and what we cook.
A ton of mac and cheese, then by all means,
right? We'll do mac and cheese every day, and it's just it's just adding a little bit more. Everything we can do for this particular project, we can already do within our own budget. We can already do it within our own budget. We have some equipment that I have had that I have not really known what to do with it. We can utilize that equipment. So we're not looking to buy a lot of extra stuff. We're not looking for, I'm not looking to spend a ton of money on this. It's literally taking what we already have and creatively utilizing it to get to a little bit more a la carte sales. A la carte sales last year was about 10% of our total revenue. I'm looking to boost that. I don't want to give we're going to get this much. I'd rather not get into something to set me up for failure. So I'm just looking to increase that upward of over 10%. Coffees, again, super cheap. People are going to buy iced coffee like crazy. Jen Mitchison, I said, oh yeah, we're going to have iced coffee all the time. She's like, set me up a meal cart. And I was like, cool, do it. And I did it right then and there. And, they're going to go and they're going to sell.
We're specifically talking about high school.
we are specifically talking about high school. I am focusing a bit more on the high school because that is where we kind of do need that even though they have the same amount enrollment as middle school, the middle school, they eat. That current last year's fifth graders, they eat a lot, and that's not been a problem, which is fantastic. High school, we've kind of dropped a bit. And, that's due to the declining enrollment, but we're looking to kind of make up that little gap there and trying to do some different things. It's going to take some trial and error because sometimes it might be a flop, sometimes it might be a huge hit, and it's going to take a little bit of time for, people to get on board. But the good news is my staff at the high school are like so excited about this. They're ready to do something different and shake up the norm. We have a woman on our staff. I actually worked with her in Wyndham. She's very food forward. She's very much like, we have this leftovers, and she'll just take it and make something just to put out as like a side. So the waste is not happening. She's not that there was a lot of waste, but she's very creative about using leftovers and things like that. And her and my new lead up there really get along. So I think they're going to make a great team on this and push these kinds of things out. And it's going to be a matter of just training up the staff, because we're already doing a snack bar like thing. It's just going to look a little bit different. And with the way the high school is currently with enrollment, we can maneuver and make and take somebody off of the serving lines to do this successfully without stressing the rest of the other four
I think
out.
you answered my question, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
You can ask the question.
Right, so I'm concerned about the staff.
Yes.
In executing this type of change in program.
Yep.
So you said they were excited about it. What's the practicality of implementing this type of change?
It's really not that much more than what we're already doing. One of the things that if I'm coming here, it's the last stop of kind of like what I've done. I've already talked with my staff and, over the course of from like April on, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And then we bounce all the ideas off each other, and they have, I have concerns about, and blah, blah, blah. And we hash all of this stuff out. I did bring
I just don't want it to be, hey, the board thinks this is great.
No.
There's no way to execute it.
No, this is me. This is the last stop. Just be like, I'm doing this just so we're all on the same page. The staff have already, they are my first line that I go to in all of these. Even the last time I presented, literally before I called Darlene, I'm like, by the way, I think I'm going to throw out that we're going to do 6th through 8. And she's like, well, figure it out. It's cool. Great. It's no big deal. So my staff are phenomenal. I know we all know this, but they are wonderful. And I found the opportunity where, and this is absolutely, we have a fresh person in charge who has different ideas, who has, wants to see, and she has 2 high school kids. She wants to see, different things be done. And we have people who are constantly pushing the envelope to do more and do better. And that's awesome. So it's going to take a little, again, it's like I said, trial and error. It's like, okay, but we're not also talking like 250 portions of mac and cheese. We're talking maybe 30. And that's like on a busy day. So it works that we're a small district and the high school is really small. Like if we tried to do this in a larger district, we would probably be drowning a little bit. But I think, and I'm also there to assist and help them as well. And, run kitchens for many, many years. It's kind of what I do. And it's just a matter of, it'll just be an adjustment, but they're excited about it.
So before talking about meal price increases and going down that, any questions on the a la carte menu? What are the board thoughts?
Wait, I made a mock-up menu. Could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, it's so small on this TV, but it's very bougie. We came up with I can't take all the credit. We'll credit ChatGPT for a lot of it, but, because that's true. But, we're calling it like Campus & Co., so it's a little trendy, a little, like, I want you to step into a place and be like, we're not at Campbell anymore. We're in a sophisticated, upscale type situation that you're willing to spend more money. Oops, as I hit the mic. As we're willing to spend a little bit more money to, get. And then all of our regular stuff's on there too, like our Pop-Tarts, our beef jerkies, Rice Krispie treats, all things we sell normally are still going to be there and available. All our regular drinks that they know and love. But now you can get coffee any time of day. And, I'm hoping to boost the staff participation as well. So that's my bougie.
Love it.
It's my bougie thing. And then, like I said, at the middle school, just doing those extras, switching out some of their snacks. You know, Darlene does a great job where they offer everything. And sometimes it's about refining that a little bit. So we're going to work with them a little bit. And, you know, maybe we don't need to always have 4 flavors of Doritos. Maybe we feature one and then kind of, you know, create that kind of need or want for it. But we can also definitely do some more hot foods there, like selling like orders of fries throughout the back. And the best part about them is there's next to no theft because literally everything is behind the counter. So high school too, but I'm doing as much creatively as I possibly can to close that gap as best I can and still provide really great items. And even on meals too, I know that we're not talking about meals, but like I've discovered these new lunches and stuff that I'm like, this is going to be great for everybody. Like egg roll bowls, like every kid is going to love an egg roll bowl. That's amazing. So like we have some new fun items coming in too that I'm really psyched about.
All right, any questions on a la carte?
There won't be shelf-stable yogurt, will there?
There won't be shelf-stable yogurt. I tried something.
Listen, I appreciate your creativity.
I tried something.
I'm just haunted by it.
All right.
A drawer.
Only for you. I actually had a case shipped to your house. Is that all right?
I have been very vocal that I think that this is a great idea. I think that we should absolutely be pursuing this.
Sorry, Squirrel, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But when we eventually do get to a point where we do have a space, I'm going to, because this is what I do, we're gonna have a big ribbon cutting ceremony. I'd like you all to come and see what we're doing and get a coffee. You know, I'll buy you a coffee. It's great. Like, I will personally, Lauren Crowley, will buy you a coffee, not the dining services department. But invite you, anyone at any point in time, come check us out. Come have lunch with us because it's so hard to just have a snapshot of what I do in front of, once every couple of months or so. Oh, you got it!
Oh, nice.
Mr. Miyagi level.
So they would be able to purchase this stuff using, I mean, the idea if we get a credit card machine is that they'd be able to use credit card machine or meal account?
You can use your meal account, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then with respect to the credit card machine, would you also, if someone were to come up to the counter for lunch and not have money on their account, would they be able to use the credit card machine?
Yep, so the whole point with the credit card machine would be that there's a minimum, because the district has to eat the fee.
Yeah.
And it's a 4% fee, so that's why that we would have the minimum of like a $10 purchase. So if you come up and you buy a lunch for $4.25, the rest of that money up to the $10 will just go right on the kid's account.
Yeah. So to me, these
And
things
then
all tie
also
together.
parents can call and I can enter them in on the credit card system, so you don't have to pay the online fee, and it's a little, but I think that that minimum might be a little bit, it might be a little higher than 10, maybe it's a minimum of 20, but you can avoid paying the online fee that way as well. Just saying.
So I think these three things tie together like very nicely. I think the meal charging policy thing, I think we have to address. I think it wasn't a huge, what was it, 5,000?
No, it was never, actually, it was only over, it was like 2,500 all year. It's now 1,980, so.
But, I mean, that's still, in our budget, that's still.
Listen, Concord was $100,000 in meal debt.
All right, well, I am going to make a motion to approve. Just do all of the three things together?
We'll do.
Don't do lunch prices yet.
No, but just the a la carte. So, then we're gonna, okay, I'll make a motion to approve the a la carte.
You guys don't have to approve the a la carte. That's just something, nope.
Okay.
That's just something we're doing, and I'm just bringing it to the board,
have at
say,
it
this
then.
is what we're doing.
Okay.
With the credit card, so with
Sorry.
respect to the,
Have at it.
Great, thanks.
with respect to the credit card machine, I know that there are credit card machines that do 3%, so I don't know.
The processor. You have to find the right
Right.
processor.
I just want to make sure that we're
The information
sourcing
I
this
gathered was
appropriately.
based on what our current software company already offers. So that was my starting point. And then again, like I said, if this wasn't gonna pass, I wasn't gonna
Sure.
really dig deep into it.
All right, I just want to make sure if we're gonna, I do think we should
I can do
pursue
research.
that. I just would like to
Yeah.
get the most economical option
Absolutely.
possible.
All right, meal prices.
Before we get there, do you need a motion for the meal charging policy or the credit card?
I would
machine-
imagine, because I'll have to rewrite the policy, then it's gonna have to go through the whole thing, so. And the credit card, if you want me to do it, great, I don't think you need an official vote on it.
Yeah, I think what we're looking for, so if we do anything with meal, with the charging, that would come through policy committee.
Yep,
So this is more of like, maybe just an indication, like, hey,
Keep
look at
going.
that, keep
Yeah.
going
Great.
at it.
Exactly.
Because that has to go through that approval process.
Yep.
With the credit card, there's a budgetary concern with that, so if that's more of a gentle too, like, keep going on that kind of
Yeah, if we're
approval.
happy
Because
to
we would
look
have to
into it.
present that in the budget process in the fall and everything like
Yep.
that, like,
I
that's
think
not snap our
board
fingers and do that.
consensus is Keep going.
Yep.
And then the last thing is the meal prices. If that's something you want to change for next year, this, and I'm not advocating for or against it. And when I say this, just like what we need from you tonight is either yay change or yay don't change, like whatever direction you want on that. And either is fine. Just like if
Yeah.
we're going to do anything, we got to do it.
so as part of the state application process, and when we get our, administrative review, whenever that ends up coming, I've been saying it's coming next year for the last like 4 years, and it hasn't shown up yet, so. That's good. We have to do this thing called the paid lunch equity tool, and basically that determines if you have to raise your prices or not. I did complete it for this going into the year, and we do not have to raise our prices. So like, sometimes it'd be like, yep, raise your prices by whatever. We do not have to do it. Again, just to reframe that conversation a little bit, it was more of like a, here's an idea that we can do. If we don't want to explore it, that's okay with me, and I know the families will also be okay with that too.
So we wanted to know that you have that. If you're looking for advice, I'm just going to speak for myself and myself solely. I'm not representing Julie or Lauren or anyone else. I would advise not to raise the prices, right? And allow this à la carte kind of idea to play out, allow some of the other things that Lauren is working in to play out, and to see if we can kind of make some small indents to it using these type of things. But it's obviously your decision. But if you're looking for, as a superintendent, what I would recommend it would be to keep your prices consistent where they are for the next year.
Our reimbursement participation is really, really good. We're running district-wide for lunch about a 50 to 52% participation. And I know, like, in grading world, that means you fail, but in food world, that's really, really, it's a hard thing to do.
Will
So-
à la carte play into that, or is that only?
A la
for-
carte will play into it, but it's not subject to reimbursement, which is why you guys don't need to vote on it.
Okay.
Because it's the value meals are what we have to,
And that may offset, I think this would offset some.
it'll help.
Oh,
Some of the 50-cent reimbursement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
I hear you, and I want to, and I don't disagree with you, and I think that's probably your opinion too.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to throw out one other idea, right?
Yeah.
And going on the conversation of, well, geez, all of our meals are about the same size, and we should probably be charging the same price for the same size across our district, right? On that part of the discussion, and knowing that elementary school is $375, middle school is $4, and high school is $425 at current rates, is there an opportunity in this kind of adjustment to say, hey, let's level set at $4, right? So high school goes down 25 cents, elementary goes up 25 cents, $4 across the board, and you're making that money up at the high school by introducing a la carte.
And adjusting the à la carte as well at the middle school.
I mean, I understand the logic of that.
I just
like,
said also with the
mathematically,
à la carte at the middle school as well, that, like, I think we have.
which is not this, it's a little different, right?
It's about, it's not this, no, it's like, we're offering seconds
Yeah,
to
yeah.
3 out of the 4 grades,
Are the
because,
I know you've said this. Are the portions across the board the same on like all the way
except
across the board?
for pasta.
Okay.
And these have been set since 2010, so if I said anything that led you to believe that it was not the same, I'm gonna apologize, but I don't remember anyway. So, pasta graduates in prices, in portions. So the elementary gets a 4-ounce portion, middle is 6, high school is 8. Fruit and vegetable, high school can take up to a cup, the other 2 schools take a half a cup.
Yes,
That's-
I don't think we should level set it. I think we should just leave it where it is for now. That's my.
Okay, just throwing out.
I get where you're coming from with that, but
No, I appreciate where you're coming from on that too. I just think in terms of the elementary school, looking at both, going back to your presentation from June 4th, we are already the highest in our peer cohort, what we label as our peer cohort for elementary school by far. There's only one other school two other schools behind us at 350. So at 375, and the rest are below 350. So we are already on the elementary school side pretty high. And then I think you included additional.
These are like smaller districts.
districts.
And Portsmouth was on there just because
But
they were
even-
kind of in our price where we were at.
But even their elementary school, again, we are the highest one on that list, even out of those. And so I think keeping the elementary school,
Are they
'Cause it's
doing the
already
same
high.
thing as us, though, that the portion sizes are the same?
Yes, if they're on the National School Lunch Program, the portion sizes are the same.
So it sounds like the will of the board is to let it ride. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
Neato. Down with that.
thank you.
Awesome work
Cool,
on
well,
this.
I don't have anything else, so. I am heading out, I'm heading out on Friday. I'm going to a conference in San Antonio.
Won't be hot there.
Nah, it'll be gorgeous and it's gonna be so hot. But, hopefully we'll get some, this is where the bistro idea came from, and I had a friend who presented it, so hopefully more awesome things to come. But thank you all so much for
Thank you again for the
everything.
great
Thank you.
presentation, all you do.
Thank you, I try. I also will be recognized in front of 7,000 people up on stage because I got the Northeast Regional thing, which is very embarrassing, but
Bring your tiara.
Well deserved.
bring the tiara, don't trip, you know.
Don't trip.
All that fun
All
stuff.
those things.
So, thank you so much. I'm going home to pack.
All right.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thanks, sir.
All right, now moving into new business and shifting gears into RFP bids.
Yeah, so we have some RFP bids. I have hard copies here if anyone needs them, but linked right there is the folder with all of the bids in it.
Yep.
We've just cleaned up the doc, just for transparency. First posted them, we jammed them up there as quickly as we could. We did take out some of the white space and cleaned up a couple of pages that weren't as visible, so it might be slightly different than what you saw the other day when you put it up there, but it's all the same information. I don't know how you want best to approach this. So we talked about this last night at facilities committee. Dan and Peter were there and Andrew came. So we can kind of go through each of the bids one by one. That seemed to work well last night. And kind of highlight some of the, I won't even say pros and cons, but just differences in the different approaches that the companies took to kind of put their bid together. And then the second thing under here is just like a generic scoring rubric, if we wanted to use a rubric of some sort to help us kind of, we don't have to, nothing says we have to use a scoring rubric, but, talking to other school districts that have done this type of stuff, some use it, some don't, something like that. So, it's an option for us. FIC last night had a good discussion about like which ones they liked and didn't like, so obviously we can talk about that as well, and then figure out what next steps you want to take with these bids and everything like that. So if that works.
That works.
All right.
Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the proposals?
Yes.
Yes, great.
Who was at FIC? Who will this be duplicative for? Going through. You were there.
Yep,
You were
Andrew was
there.
I was there.
So this is really for Matt and I.
And Julie, she was
This will be the third time I go through them. I went through them on Monday.
And if anyone wants hard copies, I have some hard copy. I'm going to refer to a hard copy.
I mean, I don't want to jump over anything, but again, we have an FIC for a reason. My understanding is that they have given a recommendation in terms of 4 potential options. Is that correct?
There was a vote last night to recommend 4 out of the 7 firms.
Does it
Why
make
did you choose
sense?
4? Was it just that there were 4 that were all pretty close that you liked?
There were 4 that answered, or at least with what I felt and with what the rest of the FIC felt, all kind of answered not only the RFP, but they listened during the pre-RFP meeting pretty well. Cost comparatively, they're very, I can't say they're all the same. They were all in the same kind of group region side, and they all had some sort of experience with something of trying to help us find an option is kind of where it came from. The actual number of 4, it just seemed like a good number. And going from
They're
there.
also delivering the same sort of level of services.
That is going to be one of those things of where I think having an interview with them and asking clarifying questions is going to help, because it could be they worded it differently, but they mean the same thing. Some groups actually worded it and stated and priced it two different ways for exactly what we asked for and what they normally do. So I think that is a part of the reason why we wanted to talk with and ask clarifying questions to these groups and companies. I mean, Joe, did I miss anything? Okay.
So having sat on last 2 years ago when we had facilities, at that point, we did have, I believe it was 3 companies come in for interviews that sat down to answer questions, and then we picked from there. Is that what we're looking to do, or?
So I think the next round is certainly questions with whoever the board would like. If it's all 4, great. If it's a subsection of the 4 for whatever the reasons, great. We can certainly leverage the scoring rubric as a baseline. If there's a standard set of questions that the board would like to ask, as well as then kind of firm-specific questions, given just the responses or how they've responded to the RFP, fine. However the board decides. The 4 firms that were selected for moving forward to the school board were
Barker and Associates, Lavalley, Harriman, and Turner Group.
And the discussion largely was centered around, and please correct me if I'm misspeaking.
No, go for it.
The conversation last night was largely centered around these specific 4 firms, their longstanding history with sizable projects in the state, their staffing, and their team approach without the need for the district to have to go out and also look for additional subcontractors to fill gaps in staffing. There was also conversation about how far the board should consider taking this. You'll note that in some of the proposals, there is up to a conceptual design, up to a schematic design, and then design development.
Yeah.
And how far we need to take it in terms of getting to a pre-bond vote. The general consensus was for Litchfield, we really need to consider going to schematics. Right.
At least a 50% schematic state, right? So we get beyond the conceptual design, we get into, they went to that next layer just so that helps firm up that number with a little bit better confidence.
What point do we have to get to for a guaranteed maximum price?
It's gonna depend on firm to firm as to what they feel comfortable with. Typically what I see is firms will give you a swag at just about any level, but then they change their confidence factors to, what that can hit. There was discussion last night about what we would like the firms to be at for that confidence level or that ROM factor to with their guaranteed maximum price and what they need to get there. That I think that's going to be a part of what's that standard, one of a standard question to the firms that we talk with. As Andrew mentioned, there was a lot of talking about how do we go from 4 down to 1, or if the board would like to talk with more than 4, then that's absolutely okay as well. It's just how do we get to 1? So Marilyn did suggest a standard set of questions that we ask everybody, and then firm specific, which I absolutely 100% agree with, and go down that path as well. Yeah. I mean, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the prices to what we thought was from what they printed, closest apples to apples range from about 140 up to about 250.
Around there, yeah.
Something in that.
Between those 4, yeah.
Right, between those 4.
So, what do you mean by that? Because I mean, looking at those, some of them were in the 400s, weren't they?
That's
right, but if you look at the line items, so
It depends on how far you want to take it.
right, so
If you want to go all the way, then you get up to 400 or 500. But if you're only going to get to what you need for pre-run stuff, you take out a bunch of those lines.
I think some of Turner's these does a good example. I think it's
Turner
Turner's.
or Barker, right?
Yeah.
Barker
Right.
does a really nice job of kind of explaining it as well. So on I'm on page 7 of Barker's as an example.
Barker's, okay.
He has broken out design, concept for 2 options at 70,000, schematic, to get to schematics, another 139,500. Great, so you're all in to get through schematics, call it, what, 240?
229.
Yeah, but plus the 50,000 or 15,000 for meetings, whatever, right? So call it $240-ish thousand, right? To get to your pre-bond vote, right? Which is pretty darn equivalent with the other 3 firms.
Yeah.
Right, that's within very close reason to the other 3 firms.
Yep.
Some of the other ones that we have questions on what they mean by conceptual design.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the language that we need to get clarified.
Sure.
Yep.
It's the design development where things start to change a little bit and the prices start to fluctuate.
And especially when they start going into 100% schematic drawings and everything like that, right? Is like they're planning on where they're going to run wires and pipes and everything else, right? So that drives a lot of, and that's why, and I think it's in Barker and Turner, you'll see like it's 200,000 just to do that step, because that's just a lot of detailed engineering work.
Because Turner did 100% of the schematic.
Right. Yep.
So when I did my little math, I just cut that number in half.
Yeah,
and
roughly.
added it
Yep.
to it, so.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's going to be, some of this is, what do they feel comfortable with of their pricing fees to get us what we're trying to look for, right? I picked what, we stated in the RFP what I thought is what I normally run off of, and everyone agreed to it. So, if we can get all of them to, call it a guaranteed maximum price with an 80 or 90% confidence number with it for a pre-bond, and if they call it conceptual versus 50% schematic or 100% schematic, do we ultimately care at that point?
I expect they will have questions for us too. What is the wish list? What are the must-haves?
Yep.
And what are the nice-to-haves would be part of that conversation as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we gotta clarify with them, though, in some of the interview process, is how that is going to work.
Right.
Like, and how that affects these conversations and everything that goes
So in
through.
terms of next steps, right, just to move the conversation along, is the board comfortable with interviewing or asking to interview all 4 firms? Or do you want to narrow it down?
I mean, I don't really have a basis to narrow it down at this point. I did go through, but I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of pages. So
Yeah.
I was going to just
Well, I
ask,
know.
did you happen to notice, do any of them have overlap in their teams? Because I noticed, for example, that Turner uses Bonnet Page and Stone. That's who Barker was.
Yep.
I don't know if Barker would still be using.
Barker's partnering with a different firm this time, so they're using SMP Architects and goes from there. And I didn't see any overlap in the teams. Like Harriman, everybody's on staff, right? They're not subbing to anybody. Turner has a long-standing relationship, and LaValle has long-standing relationships, and they're all different. I'll say the rubric that we kind of all talked about was, in their proposal, can you pick out quickly, did they listen, did they read the RFP and answer what we're looking for in the RFP, right? One of the things that stood out is we explicitly stated our timeline. Only one firm actually put in a schedule and a timeline of what it would be to get there. And
Which firm was that?
LaValle. But it's just, for me in this case, right, is I go, how well did they listen? How well did they read? Did they answer what we're looking for? And can you find it up front and easy? And kind of base it off of that. And then you start looking at references and their history and stuff like that. And that seemed to be kind of what we went through last night, and it worked. Seemed pretty decent. Everybody kind of got to the same feel.
They did, how similar they are to some
Right.
environments.
Yep. Yeah. So, and going from there. So.
My inclination is to interview all 4.
So what is the mechanics of that, right? If we have all 4 come in, we certainly don't want them all sitting together.
We line them up back to back, so typically on the hour.
Yeah, and
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And when would the board like to do that? I would not propose doing that in August at our August meeting. I would propose doing that
Earlier, right?
Yeah.
Prior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It would mean another meeting. It doesn't have to be a public hearing or anything like that, right?
It would need to be a public announced session because the board is meeting.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
But this would be our specific agenda item.
The question is, how quickly could they be ready? I would assume probably
Do-
quickly, because they've all put in.
I mean, the only logistical concern I have is I am on work travel the last week of July.
It's tough luck.
If I can attend remotely, I will try to attend and go from there. But yeah, I mean, it's, the last week of July, or it is my only hiccup that I've got.
What were you thinking, Andrew?
I mean, I think we need to, as a next step, coordinate with the superintendent and the business administrator and just figure out when they're available to meet, right?
They may not all be available on the same day.
They may not
too.
all be available on the same day. Ideally, we can get them back to back on the same day.
Right.
And just line them up. It'd probably be like a 4-hour meeting, right?
Just like the old days.
Is that what you did for GMS?
No, so this is, GMS? Yeah.
For the
When you
last
did
one.
the-
So the
Windows
last
bill.
one, we brought, the way that it was done was the interviews were conducted by the facilities committee. They were private. They were not open to the public because you get into people's reputations, you get into questions about their building, their past buildings, what you've seen and heard, and so they were private. I don't know how the companies feel about those necessarily being public. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, I'm just saying how it was done.
And they all seem to include a page about, litigation. So-
Yeah, because I think they know a thing or two about it.
Well, but they're saying, like, they're being transparent with it. I don't necessarily have a problem with it being public. I think
Well, I
that,
think that needs to, my thought was that it would go to them to decide that. I don't know, it's their reputations that we're talking about.
yeah, but they're bidding a public project, though.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking in the interest of time, right, in terms of selection and moving forward, is that just creating another step in the process?
I don't know. Regardless, facilities interviewed and set forth one name to the school board. School board did not interview everyone. It was facility, so we didn't have to deal with noticing public meetings. There were 2 members from the school board that were present for those interviews, along with the rest of school district staff and the members of FIC at the time.
Yeah, see that, I thought that's what Dan was kind of explaining last
Yeah.
time, Dan Mitchell, because obviously we weren't here for that.
Yeah.
That it was like those private settings, you had a couple representatives from different groups,
Yeah.
a couple board, 2 board members.
They came
us.
in, they had
And you had that kind of.
yeah.
And so you could kind of ask more pointed questions, right? And like getting some of the nitty gritty of it all without, them feeling pressured to like, oh, I'm on TV or I'm in public, or how is someone going to respond to this,
Well, the FIC meetings are public.
No,
No,
this
the
was,
firms.
this was private, this was not an FIC meeting, this was
Call it
something
a school
separate.
business meeting.
Yeah, because when we did, even the pre-bid meeting, I mean, that was private, right? And like, so they asked us like, nothing inappropriate, but they asked pointed questions,
Yeah.
right? Like, where maybe they wouldn't have asked those questions if they were on for all display, I don't know. I can't speak for them.
Nor can they
So those
necessarily
interviews be done
answer.
as a business meeting, if the entire board is there?
No.
No,
it would be a
Sounds like
representative
we're
of
trying
the
to
board. Sorry, so it would be 1, 2 members max of the board participating in that session.
I think if you did it that way, I'm not advocating for or against, but I think one of the pros is if you had to not line them up back to back, you might have a better chance of doing that if it's not the full board and it's not in that public forum, right? Like, so if, you picked a week to do it, no offense, but say the last week of July, just for argument's sake, then it's, firm could come, 2 firms could come on Tuesday, a firm could come on Wednesday, and a firm could
Right.
come on Thursday. You can kind of like have that schedule in place there.
You can
So-
get it out, get
Oh,
it
and you
over
might
in
be
an
able
hour
to
or 2
attend for an
hours.
hour, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I mean, it's the will of the board. What do you think?
I think that's fine. I just think that we do need to make a decision as to whether or not it should be televised.
Again, I'm all for being as clear and transparent to the public as possible, but when it comes to this type of situation, I think for the protection of the companies as well as the district, to be able to fully vet and scope out, ask the questions we need to ask, the meeting should be non-public, but that's my view.
So my inclination is that I think that Julie should reach out to the 4 and ask them what their what their feelings are on that. I mean, if all four of them are like, we don't care, I would rather it be public, because I think that one thing that's happened with the FIC is it's been a very public discussion of how we've gotten to the point that we're at, and I think that for this part of it it would be beneficial for people to be able to go back and see how this part of it played out.
I agree. I think they should be public too.
If all four of them are like, no, we're not doing that, then I think we have to, then we're really departing from like standard protocol, but,
Yep.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's ask the question. Let's reach out to the four that have been selected. Let's see what their availability is to meet over the next few weeks, if they can give us a few options of times.
I would suggest after the 18th, because that's when Dan's back, Dan Mitchell. I think it's important. I would advocate for Dan to be part of this.
Yes.
Because he has the
Yes.
most knowledge
Yep.
of the building and everything along those
Yes.
lines. So I know he's returned from Ireland there after the 18th.
I do think we're gonna have, transparency aside, I think it's gonna be very difficult to find time slots that all five of us can, and Dan and the district people can meet.
I'm sure you're right.
Oh, it's
we
not
can
gonna be
give
all
it
five
a-
of us. I thought we were talking about two.
No,
If it's a
not.
public session,
It's 5.
it would be a public board meeting.
Oh, okay, I
That-
gotcha.
I think logistically it might be a challenge.
Sure.
Yeah, that
But it's
would be my
4 out
concern.
of 5 or 3 out of 5 or.
Right.
Well, you gotta have your quorum, if you're
Right.
gonna do with that,
Right.
right? So you need at least three of you. So we can, Julie can ask. I'm gonna just be honest with you, the 23rd is out for me personally. It's my 15th year wedding anniversary. I think my wife would kill me if,
She'll understand.
yes,
I'm
no,
sure she's watching right now and she's saying, no, it's fine.
no, if she's
We'll
watching
go
right
up next
now.
Tuesday.
Oh, look, an email from her right now.
Right, yeah.
So next step, reach out to the vendors, right? Let's get their availability, see what their willingness is to meet in public versus not, and just let us know.
And with those dates, I ask that, let me know and I can send it out to the rest of the FIC.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we'll see if we can get a quorum of them there as well.
All right.
The absolute intention is to have all four of these complete prior to our August meeting.
And our August meeting's August 6th.
Correct.
Plan.
And I'd like to propose that going into the August 6th meeting, we have the information to have an informed discussion about next steps.
That works?
So think of all your questions.
Yep. That work?
Yeah, so just point of clarity, so for these interviews, which we would do before August 6th, we would need questions for them. Are you comfortable with us preparing the questions and reaching out to you, the FIC, for suggested questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
So-
if there's a working Google Sheet that we can create.
Yeah.
Right, just collaborate through a Google Sheet with the
Yep.
FIC and members of the board. Let's use that mechanism.
Yeah, just so everyone sees the questions, we know what we're gonna ask, and if people have specific things they're looking for, then they can put it on as a suggestion, so.
Yeah, and publicly state this is both standardized and firm-specific questions.
Yeah.
That, as we understand it, for each of the firms.
All right, sounds good. Anything else on RFPs at the moment?
No.
I will just say, I'll give a huge shout out to the FIC. We got through a lot, call it 700 pages worth of proposals and stuff last night in about little over 2 hours. We made a lot of progress, a lot of headway. Everyone came together. There was great information and discussions and how people looked at this back and forth. So just give a shout out to the FIC on that one.
Was it a pretty full committee?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just what everybody was there. Only Jason LaMountain couldn't make it, but he informed me ahead of time. So we were all but one member.
Awesome. I'm done now.
All right, cell phone law.
So this, I just want to update the board, this passed, I'm sure you know, the bell ban, ban and what that actually means. So what it means, the actual law is attached there, feel free to read it, but to summarize, so essentially from the first bell of the school day to the last bell of the school day, students are not prohibited from having their cell phones. And this is through every grade level. There's an exception for for special education.
And
And a
multilingual.
superintendent can put an approved exception in for a situation if need be, so, or designate, so I might designate that to a couple people, but, and some medical exemptions and stuff like that. So, we need to write a policy, every school district now needs to write a policy connected to that, so we'll do that through policy committee. No one has a policy yet, like, there's procedural language in a lot of student handbooks.
There's already a school in New Hampshire who has one.
Not a policy. So like, for example,
Just a rule.
there's rules. So like, plenty of school districts have some version of a rule in their student handbooks. The two that you see referred to in like news articles a lot is out of Claremont Stevens High School and then Salem School District. So neither has developed an actual policy yet, which is fine, they didn't have to. It's just contained within their student handbooks, and it just details the procedural way of how they operate it. For example, at Claremont, they've used the Yonder pouches to kind of enact that. Pelham, has done that as well, where there's a whole process where there's these pouches, the kids put it in, it's a magnetic lock. They have to get it locked in the morning, and then they get it unlocked in the afternoon through whatever system they used to do at the front office or whatever the case may be. Where others have varying degrees of restrictions, right? Like Salem's, which I was reading up today, is more about putting it in their backpacks and different things, and to make sure you're doing it. So you got to kind of, one, we have to write a policy connected to this. New Hampshire School Board Association has not put out a sample policy yet, but it's coming,
Yeah.
right? So, we'll look at what that sample language is, because I think one of the things that school districts are struggling with is, policy versus procedure on like how to like approach this, right? Like, everyone's going to have their set of procedures on how you enact this, and that's where you're going to put consequences and the discipline code and all that type of stuff. But then what is the policy might actually be super short, right? It might just be the law, and changed into some policy language.
So you said the language about the bell to bell, that's not written in here.
It's not in the law, but in the interpretation of it that we get, like from an administrative point of view, the interpretation of it is that kids aren't going to have it from the first bell to the last bell.
Really? Because I don't read it. I guess I
I didn't read
But
it that
I
way.
think
don't
this-
read it that way. Because it
But-
says
and-
class instruction. So lunch to me would not be
Right.
class instruction.
Well, and I think this is one of the things where we're looking for guidance
Yeah.
on how to enact this, right? Like, using Claremont as an example, using Pelham as an example.
Yeah.
It is a literal bell to bell. They put them in those pouches and the kids don't get it.
Which makes sense because that's probably the easiest procedurally to
Right.
do, rather than here you go, give it back, here you go, give it back all day long.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Right.
But I don't think the law. Yeah.
When you go to, when the policy committee goes to discuss this, I would just encourage you to talk to our insurer, because if we're gonna take possession of everyone's phones, one kid's battery overheats and lights them all on fire, is the district replacing, 300 iPhones?
Yeah. And I think we just gotta also see what people are like comfortable with.
Yeah.
Back when I was a high school principal, we had not a strict cell phone policy, but like teachers we eventually got to a point where we tried to be somewhat uniform in the school, and we did the classic, you put the shoe holder on the back of the door and kids would put their phone in. And there's varying degrees of success with that type of model with high school age kids, right? And varying degrees of enforcement from teachers and stuff like this. I think when we have to enforce this really uniformly, is in my opinion, right? Like, because it is an actual law. This isn't just like, we know cell phone use hurts education, hurts instruction, everything along that lines. But there's an actual law saying you can't use your phones. So we gotta really kind of come down on it and figure out what is going to work for us. Now, we had talked about the locker type of idea or the cabinet type of idea for cell phones, right? We were using the middle school as an example. Middle school kids are different than high school kids, right? If kids just have to put them away in their backpack or leave them in their actual school locker, that actually might create more distraction than not, right? Because they're going to look to go to the bathroom if they need to go check their phone. They're going to take their backpack with them. They're going to try and go to their locker to check their phone. So is it easy? And I'm not saying it is or isn't,
Yeah.
but is it easier just to leave it in a cabinet all day and call it a day?
I think you're better off in long run to have the first time we go through this, the most strict policy.
I agree.
Because if
Yep.
you start easier, it's in my backpack, then it's gonna be very difficult to say, you know what? It's going in your locker or it's going in the cabinet.
Now, the schools that have done, like, a Yonder pouch is the most like common one that people have used at this point. and this, I don't have data to back this up, this is just conversational with other school leaders. They say it makes a huge difference to ban it throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like, if they cannot really get access to it, there's whining for the first couple of weeks, but then they figure out it's actually helpful to not have their phone. And from both like just an instructional learning standpoint and like a social, because they actually have to talk to
They
people.
have to talk to each other, because kids can't do that anymore.
Yeah, and so like they actually have seen like a better culture in their building, improvement in some of the, again, I don't have data to back this up, but just like from conversational pieces that the hard cell phone bans are having some success in schools. And I'll be honest, like when we had a softer one, you know, at the school where I was an administrator, everyone starts out, you know, on it, and then it just kind of trickles off. Some people stay super on top of it, some people not as much. I don't blame anyone. It's, you know,
Right, it gets old,
It gets
policing that,
Right, yeah.
which is again why you would start
Yeah.
with the most strict policy.
Yeah.
More to come?
No, I'm listening. I'm just, you know, I know we encumbered money for lockers at the middle
Yeah.
school. Have those been purchased?
They have not, because we were waiting for this all to be done. We're gonna have
We
this.
said we were
This is
gonna
for a
look in,
solution.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna
it was
try
for a
and see if
solution,
there's
not
anything
any-
else that happens too.
Okay. So,
I think we're waiting on a sample policy, right?
Well, we were waiting for the definite law to
Law to
come.
pass.
Right.
yeah, the
The
law
governor just
passing was.
signed
No, but now, though, I'm saying, it sounds like doesn't.
But I'm assuming the policy is gonna be, I'm assuming the suggested policy is gonna be pretty there's not gonna be a ton to it, right?
be
It's gonna be like, school has to have his, you know.
So
cell phone
basically, our policy
Right.
committee just needs to start working on this.
What's that?
So our policy committee needs to start working on this, right?
Yeah, and there's also not a defined date when we have to have this in place. I mean, I would have it for the first day of school, because you want to start school year off fresh with whatever your new rules are and stuff
Says
like that.
July
It
1.
says July 1,
Um,
2025, so.
But you just gotta start working on the policy. So the law is in place, but when the policy is in place, it's not defined yet. But again, I would suggest to have that for the first day of school.
Yes.
Fun times. I would suggest having it in place earlier so it can be communicated
Yeah.
prior to.
Oh, I'm
That's
not advocating to
Yeah.
wait. That's not what I'm saying, but just like,
Like, surprise, hand me your
Yeah.
phone.
and I think you're gonna, you know, I think people are gonna be on board with a harsher procedure where you get it out of the kids' hands, particularly at that middle
I
school
think the
age.
policy needs to be specific between, look at this thing.
Another fly?
They keep coming
I got one
alive.
right here.
Really? Chris? Between elementary, middle, and high school. I do think elementary needs to be called out. There are elementary kids with cell phones. How are you gonna manage that?
Same way? You have to do it the same way. Give me your phone.
So is that?
That's
gonna
the
be on a-
danger, taking a kid's phone,
Is
right?
that gonna be on a?
Because I have
teacher?
seen teachers take a kid's phone and then go, oops, and then destroy a phone, and then the school's buying a new phone.
It's got a nice case on it.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking to break.
He had a pillow over here.
Gonna break
Get a new
mine
phone.
too?
Is that a school?
I mean, if we're not
It's
gonna
not a
put-
school district phone.
If we're not
My
gonna
school
put,
one is
uh,
safe here.
If we're putting something only in place at the middle school and high school, we could, conceivably just say at the elementary school, just no, don't bring, you can't bring a phone to school,
Yeah, that's
right?
not gonna happen.
But how do you enforce that? This has always been the thing I've been concerned about, with whatever the law was. How are you gonna enforce this stuff, right? Like, there's always been the struggle with
See,
cell
we've-
phones, like, the entire existence with kids, is how do you enforce?
How do you enforce anything? It's just consequences.
And I would
think
say-
elementary probably needs to be teacher monitored, right?
Yeah.
I think elementary kids are probably leaving it in their backpack for
Right.
the most part, or probably having it through a watch of some sort, right? And I think that just needs to be monitored through teachers and usage.
Right.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but the school boards and board of trustees shall develop and adopt a policy. Doesn't say anything about enforcement.
Right.
We should enforce our own policies. I'm not at all arguing that we should not, but that part isn't in the law. So to the extent that a cell phone slips by, I don't think we're
Can
going
you
to
imagine
be
spending all the time to draft that law, then realize you forgot to require that it's enforced?
I'm just saying.
Violation of law, so it's sort of,
Well, no.
Well, no, it's not, because the
Law is to
law
develop the
requires us to
policy.
adopt a policy, and we
That's all it
are.
does.
and if you're outside the policy, then you're in violation.
Well, policy isn't a violation of the law. Those are two different things. I mean, that's,
So it's going to policy committee, right?
yes.
Yeah.
We're meeting next Tuesday, is I
Next
think what we landed on, so
So
if you
therefore,
have thoughts, let us know.
We'll
So-
wait for a first read of the policy.
Yeah.
or more to come.
More to come.
That's all I got for cell phones. They're a pain.
That's all we need for tonight.
How long, so knowing that our next meeting is August 6th, right? And
Yeah.
knowing that the first day of school is right around the corner from that point, how long will it take to acquire said storage units? Because
We can
Flying off
check.
the shelves.
Yeah.
Because policy goes first read and then second
Right.
read, right?
Right.
We need to approve the policy before anything's, like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have these things for the first day of school.
Yeah. I mean, this is where you can kind of get, I don't want to say get cute with the policy versus procedures, but you can get a little cute with policy for procedures. Nothing stops us right now from putting any set of procedures in related to cell phones, period, right?
Right.
Like, we could say this is our procedure around cell phones, and as long as it's not violating the policy that currently is not written, then we can have that procedure, right? Like we have a procedure for, kids leaving to go to the bathroom, right? Like, that's not written in policy anywhere. We just have a set of procedures that schools use to go use the bathroom, right? So we can make decisions on how we're gonna do procedural work when it comes to policing cell phones. That's separate than necessarily approving the policies, as long as when we have that final policy, we're not doing anything procedurally that violated the one that we ended up reading,
I
or
think
writing.
what I would request is before the next meeting, maybe when, by August, you come in with a proposal for how you want to, what devices
What
you need to
procedural
purchase,
steps.
whatever
Yeah.
it's gonna be,
Yeah.
the pouches, the lockers, the whatever, having researched and seen what's out there.
Yeah.
What makes the most sense so that we can go ahead and authorize.
And I'd like to understand a plan from the principals, right, on how they're effectively thinking about managing this in the buildings.
I mean, usually that first August board meeting is also student handbook, approval.
Right.
So obviously this will be pretty prominent in the student handbook, so it's a natural time to kind of have that discussion with the building level administrators.
For sure.
Okay. More to come.
More to come. Speaking of policies.
Speaking of policies.
Well, we just had some other
list again.
there's not a ton to go into great detail here, but we just want to make you aware of some other legislative things that are out there. We're not going to go through every single law connected to education. But just to touch on that, the expanded EFA accounts without the cap to it was passed.
There's been huge adoption, right? I think there's 9,000 applications or something.
Yeah, so eventually we'll see we don't have this data yet, but we do get it at some point, on who lives in Litchfield and who has access to those accounts. So that will be a curious thing for us to check out when that time comes, whether we've seen.
Them accessing doesn't necessarily mean that they'll leave the district, though, right?
If they, well, what do you
I
mean?
think
Like,
they access the money.
if they're accessing the money, they could be using it for homeschool, so then they're not necessarily leaving our district per se, but we're not necessarily.
So it's
using it.
actually if they actually access the money. It's not if they're awarded. Because you could be awarded and not take it, right?
Correct, yeah, and then you're just coming to our school.
Gotcha.
Our schools and stuff.
So you'll get data on who actually
We'll get a
is-
data who actually took the money and has
Accepted
gone
it.
elsewhere
Okay.
and is not attending our schools, whether it's a homeschool or a private institute at that,
Wow.
so.
Interesting.
Now, we can't obviously make the specific people public, but we get the raw numbers of it and stuff
Yeah.
like that, so. So we'll be curious and see if that affects us. We didn't have, anything out of the ordinary last year when it came to, we had a handful that accessed it, but they were kids that had previously been attending private schools before the EFA stuff got into place, so. But we'll see if those numbers change. Open enrollment has been kind of tossed around a lot from a legislation standpoint. The adjustments to open enrollment bills hasn't really affected us. Julie, hop in here, but it's just a budgetary thing at this point.
At this point, right, we have to have a line item in our budget for tuition, for any kind of transfers. But that's something that it's coming, we have to kind of prepare for it. One thing that, even though the open enrollment doesn't really, hasn't really changed a lot, there is another bill for, relative to interdistrict public school transfers. That one says that we do need to have the school board basically design a policy defining capacity, what capacity is in our district. Because one thing that the intra-district transfer won't affect us too much, but say in a multi-school district where there's 5 elementary schools, there is a difference for them in that a parent can say, I want my child to go to this other elementary school. And as long as they have capacity, they have to allow that student to transfer. Right now, as far as inter-district, when it comes to out-of-district transfers, there's still other hoops that people have to jump through that's very similar to now, like hardships and whatnot.
Yeah, but it'd be wise to start defining that
Correct. Defining
capacity for
capacity is
us, so
important
if
for
it
us
does
to do.
open up more, we have the answers to that already. Now with one, again, like with one of each level, we're not gonna have that swapping around, right? But in, say, like, Keene, where I grew up, there was 5 elementary schools, right? So you would have to define the capacity for each of those elementary schools, and if someone made a request to attend a different one, they could do that, as long as it's in supplant capacity. And then just with open enrollment in general, yeah, with that budgetary thing, we'll have to, in the budget stuff next fall, have a new line that is for open enrollment and put $1 in it, because we'll be now bound, right, to have that as a budgetary line for the future if open enrollment opens up and it starts being more widespread, so.
What happens if the budget committee cuts it?
It's
Just kidding.
a law, so I think we got law on this one. I think we got a bill on this one.
Get a chick in the hive, Matt.
But open enrollment will be interesting to kind of follow, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't preclude us from entertaining conversations with other districts, if there are students that a district is willing to tuition to us, you know. I have an example in my head. I'm not going to talk about it publicly just because confidentiality around it with it. But I'll use a broad one that happened in other places. Like, for example, a district like Hooksett can send their kids to different public schools because they don't have a public high school, right? So they have a set of schools that they will send their kids to, but sometimes they'll depart from their list of schools, and that can be a negotiation between district and district to accept that kid. So even though we're not in an open enrollment school by definition, if a district approaches us for one reason or another, then we can engage in that conversation and allow students to attend here. But then there's a tuition cost for the district sending the kid and stuff.
One thing they did define in the open enrollment policy, RSA, is that it's an 80-20 split, so the sending district has to pay 80% of the tuition, to the receiving, yeah. And then you can keep,
And then we eat the 20%?
the 20% is kept by
But you-
the receiving district.
Yeah, and I think the idea behind that is because, like, you have some of the resources in place already, right? Like, say you have a kid coming here from a different district. If we were if we were a full-on open enrollment district, we wouldn't necessarily be hiring a new teacher if we got one kid in, right? Like, that kid's just gonna be put in a class.
Right.
We're not increasing necessarily our expenses to take on that kid, per se. There should be tuition paid to us, but, like, we're not hiring another teacher because we just have a random kid coming in, right? So
Then it's also keeping some sort of baseline for the district that's losing the kid, too.
yes, yeah.
Gotcha.
This dates back a little bit. Sarah's talked a lot about this throughout the year, but now you're going to start seeing it in policy, is with the ED 306 changes that happens. Now we have a whole mess of policies we have to adjust our language in. Some are very minor adjustments, some are going to be more significant, and you'll start seeing those at future board meetings. We'll start doing the first set of policy committee next week and stuff like that. So just more to come, as
And a
people
full
like to say.
checklist.
Who's on the policy committee?
I will say, if anyone is interested in looking at the bills, the NHSBA sent us a recent email. It was on June 27th with their legislative update. If you click on the link, it is a list of every bill that impacts the
Yeah.
districts, where it stands, which ones were signed, which ones were vetoed, which ones never made it out of committee, et cetera. So you can see when things go into effect and what impact they're gonna have, in all your free time.
If you'd like support on the policy, can you just let me know?
Yeah, no, we're fine. We're gonna meet on Tuesday. We'll see how it goes. We'll get through as much as we can.
Okay. Anything else? DFA policy.
Yeah, we have one policy. This is your annual review of the investment policy. By definition of the policy, you need to review it annually, so we are bypassing policy committee for it because nothing has changed. It's just your annual review of the investment policy.
I'll make a motion to approve policy DFA for a first read.
A motion by Mr. Shoemaker, I will second. Additional discussion on policy DFA.
I guess my only question would be, do we need to do a first read, second read if nothing's changed? I think we can bypass policy and make it
Sure can.
a final tonight, so we just don't
So I
have
will
to deal with.
amend my motion to So what would I amend it to just be
Make it a final read.
Make it a final read for policy DFA.
Second. All right, a motion and a second for policy DFA as a final read. Additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, DFA is approved.
One less thing for the August 6th meeting.
There are a lot of easy ones, just giving you a heads up.
Let's do the hard one first.
All right, moving right along, we have school board comments.
School board comments. God, I don't.
None?
No?
None?
None.
None? Okay.
I appreciate, Andrew, you attending the FIC last night and kind of listening in and helping out with that. So.
Oh, my pleasure. That was nice to sit in and, yeah, no, thanks, thanks for all the hard work on the FIC for sure. Manifest. We have several manifest items to read from July 9th, 2025. We have manifest 403B for $499,284.91. We have LSSA dues for $205.06. We have payroll manifest, $104,741.12. We have another manifest 403B, $11,007.54. We have several accounts payables, 4 of them, $85,936.52. Another one for $34,741.87. Third for $527,855, and the fourth for $12,033.31. And then we have 2 credit card manifests for $12,217.21, and then the second for $600. Welcome to the start of the school year. All right, that closes manifest, and we'll move into our second community input this evening. If you could just state your name and address again, please.
Hi, Ronald Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle. What I want to talk about in this session is something that was generated out of information that was provided over time via the FIC that I was on for a while. Specifically, there was discussions about the utilization of Campbell High School, and the previous principal made many assertions that there was no available classrooms, very limited within Campbell High School. It was all full up. And so I began to kind of question, well, that doesn't make any sense, given the fact that we only have 350 students and the building can hold 550. Something doesn't add up. So, long story short, it led to asking for more information regarding the utilization, and specifically began to raise in my mind questions on class sizes. And how are we doing on class sizes compared to the stated targeted averages that the school department has? And so one of the things that I had been waiting for, and I do appreciate from Mr. O'Connell and then Andrew forwarded me a listing which I sent out as well in the information that identified the number of students in both LMS and Campbell High School on a day basis for the number of students in the class that was taught, and then there was a listing of in a matrix of the number of available classrooms within each structure. So what I did before I received that is I actually said, well, okay, let me see if I can figure out how we're doing as far as number of teachers and give some idea as to where we are potentially with average class sizes. That actually is the first spreadsheet that I did that I presented to the Budget Committee that, Andrew, you were at on the 22nd of May. And in that, long story short, without getting into all the details, and you can ask any questions, but essentially I looked at from the available budget, how many teachers we have in each one of the 3 schools, and then the number of students, and then made calculations as to what that gives us for potential number of teachers that are appropriate or maybe over. On the LMS side, this original calculation came up and said that we're approximately 7 teachers over. And on the high school side, it says we're approximately just shy of, or 8.55 teachers over at the high school. And that's simply based upon a calculation of, okay, what's our average class size should be, and how many teachers do we need to teach that. There is an adjustment in this for the fact that teachers are only supposed to teach 5 classrooms a day and have a supervisory period. So that's in this calculation, and that's what I presented to you before. Then, using the information that was provided on the utilization, I produced the next couple of spreadsheets that shows a breakdown of the daily classes taught at LMS. And what's available from this is we can actually calculate the average class sizes for LMS, and it comes in at 20.5. And as you know, at LMS, the targeted class sizes are 21 and 22, depending on the splits of the grades. So the class sizes are just slightly lower than the target. But what was troubling me is that initially I couldn't figure out, okay, well, the calculation shows then that the amount of teachers that are in there is about right. And I looked at that and compared it to my other spreadsheet. Well, what's wrong? Well, what I discovered is that the number of teachers would be about right if they only taught 4 periods a day. If they taught 5 periods a day, then that would have reduced the number of teachers needed by down to 5.6, which compares to about the 6.7 that I had previously. So it appears that the teachers are not teaching their full required contract load at LMS. If you look at Campbell High School, it's actually a very different, analysis, where LMS was somewhat near on the average class sizes. The average class size at Campbell High School is 16.3 students, and your target is 23. What's actually very disturbing, if you look through, there's 124 periods. In a day, there's only 9 classes that reach the 23. 9. Interestingly enough, there's 13 that are 10 and under. This is private school type of gradation. If you go down through the calculations, if you adjusted the class sizes to 23, you could reduce teachers, 8.4 teachers. And that compares to the 8.5 that I calculated with my other method. So long story short, a couple of things here that, in my mind, is particularly Campbell High School, the curriculum is got to be looked at and completely readjusted. We cannot have 16.3 average class size. We can't have the number of classes under 10 at 13. If you look through the day and the number of classes, it's really quite disturbing to see how it's all scheduled out. There needs to be something done to bring this in line with the 23. And it brings me to the point of going back to what we're doing with the FIC, and I'll go back to the LMS sheet. And not the calculations, but your particular sheet that you furnished. What's interesting in that is the superintendent has made a statement that we're not going to do anything with LMS. You can't touch LMS. We potentially can move 7 and 8 up to high school, but you can't do anything with LMS. If you look at the class schedule for LMS, at least every period of every day, there's at least 7 open classrooms. Excuse me, there's 8 open classrooms every period, every day, with the exception of 1 period that has 7 classrooms. So what that says to me is we're short 3 classrooms, and now only 2, because we're gonna have a reduced kindergarten, at Griffin Memorial, according to Mr. Mitchell, the principal. So, to find our classrooms, the simple answer is to move 1 grade up to LMS. Plenty of space, simple move, nothing has to be done. But superintendents eliminated that from the options. What frustrates me and frustrated me before is no one has looked at some of these details. And that's why people got frustrated with me on the FIC, because I did, and I brought them up and people didn't want to hear them. And so that's the situation we find ourselves in. And just to prove the capacity of LMS, this is from that same document that I read from earlier. This is the master plan out of the 2002 town master plan. And under the facilities, it simply notes, it has a comparison of enrollment and building capacity for the schools. And the thing to note is that the optimal enrollment for Litchfield Middle School is 500. We are 344. Clearly, we can move at least 1 grade up there without any problem whatsoever. And why that's not an option, I have no idea. It would eliminate the difficulty of trying to move 7 and 8 up to Campbell High School. I really think that it's a planned fix to eliminate LMS, because to me, it's an obvious answer. But be that as may. So, with that, I would like to conclude a couple of just general observations. You, Mr. Cutler, last night said you wanted to guarantee maximum price coming out of the upcoming engineering study. None of what's going to be done by any of these firms will give you a guaranteed maximum price. The guaranteed maximum price is actually developed.
I didn't say that.
You did ask for that.
I did not, so if you're gonna quote me correctly.
I apologize if I misquoted
I didn't say a
you.
word during that meeting, if you watched.
What's that?
I really didn't say a word during that meeting, if you.
No, you did at the end. And that's not, you said a lot at the end, didn't you?
I was quite quiet during that whole meeting,
Until the end.
when I said thank you to the FIC.
You want to go back and look at that? There was plenty that
Have
you
something to
said.
say, or are you done?
No, I'm not
on
done.
the board.
So anyway, I would just say that there was a discussion by somebody that we wanted to have a guaranteed maximum price. And that's one of the things we didn't have at the last new school proposal. We didn't have the guaranteed maximum price. And what's being proposed now will not get you the guaranteed maximum price. And with that, you won't have, for your bond vote next year, a guaranteed maximum price the way you're going now. You need to go much farther in design than we're planning to go. To get a guaranteed maximum price, you need to bring on a construction manager or a design build firm, and they need to have sufficient design done in which they can price that out, get subs, and they will create a guaranteed maximum price. And that won't happen the way things are structured now.
I think that's one of the questions we'll ask Ron when they're here, is what do they need to get to a guaranteed maximum price? So I don't know enough about construction to say one way or another, but that's a question we will ask.
That's good.
And if they provide us different information, then we'll,
I can just tell you, you're gonna have to go a lot farther in design than what was proposed. And I said I made a statement previously when I was on the FIC that I thought the scope of what was put together was flawed. I think the wide responses in the wide range of understanding of what was presented within the proposals indicates that people didn't understand what you were asking for. It was not specific enough. It was very vague, and you got what you asked for. And if you continue that way, you're going to have problems, and this won't provide what you want it to provide. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Any other community input this evening? All right, hearing and seeing none. With that, that concludes our public session this evening. The board does have non-public business under RSA 91A3, A, B, and C. With that, I will entertain the motion, roll call vote to go into non-public. Motion by Mr. Shoemaker,
I'll second.
second by Mr. DeWitt. Roll call vote, Mr. Plansky.
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker.
Aye.
I'm an aye, Ms. Ames.
Aye.
Mr. DeWitt.
Aye.
That carries 5-0. Thank you very much, all. Next meeting is August 6th, and we are now in non-public.